You've obviously been involved in trials where officers have been exposed to planting evidence and things along that nature. Are there repercussions after a trial for these individuals, or what's the fallout from that when an officer is exposed to doing something nefarious?
Unfortunately, there are very little repercussions, and there absolutely should be, because if they're violating an accused's rights, they shouldn't be in law enforcement to begin with. We have to have law enforcement you can trust. I am pro law enforcement. I am pro proper law enforcement. I am pro law enforcement agents who actually do their job and not ones that violate the Constitution or violate an accused's rights. So I don't want people to think I'm like anti-law enforcement. I'm probably the furthest from that. I'm very pro-law enforcement. I'm pro-law enforcement doing their jobs and not violating someone's rights. And I hope that everyone is. Because if you're not, we're going to descend into a nation without any type of law and order. And you have to have that in a modern society. But the reality is there's not a lot of repercussions. What will happen is they'll say, well, that's just the defense attorney. He's doing his defense attorney tricks or whatever it happens to be. And nothing happens to them. And we just had a case where a judge reamed out, essentially on the record, excoriated the law enforcement agents for bad faith and egregious conduct. What's going to happen to them? Probably nothing. And that's the problem. These law enforcement agents should be held accountable, because I can guarantee you that if a service member did that, they'd probably go to court-martial for it. Very, very little happens to the law enforcement agents. Now, sometimes there can be a reprimand that's placed in their file, but law enforcement agents, the senior leadership is very reluctant to do that because their career in law enforcement is going to be over, as it should be. Because if there is let's say if you're in the Army and you have a general officer memorandum of reprimand placed in your file for planting evidence, your days of as being a cop are over, because everyone's going to cross-examine you on that. Your credibility's shot. But the reality is that is what should be happening. So instead of using these general officer memorandums of reprimand, these GOMARs, to CYA for 2 and 3 stars, sexual assaults that they can't prove actually happened, they should be giving them to these law enforcement agents who are violating the Constitution. But that's probably never going to happen, because the military in general is in a different headspace in terms of leadership, in terms of what their goals are, than it was, even 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I think that's a problem. So very little happens to these law enforcement agents. It should. But what I can guarantee you is that they're going to have a very, very bad day in court when I'm there. It's going to be a very, very bad day in court for them. And it's a show. It is a great show, but it shouldn't have to be, because we shouldn't have to be in a position where I've got to excoriate a cop or a law enforcement agent for doing the wrong thing. But if that happens, trust me, it's going to be no holds barred. We're going to go all in. I'll bring all the firepower we have. And that's when that's what I'm kind of known for doing. And you'll see the word gets around. Next, the courtrooms, the law enforcement agents come in, the courtroom's packed at standing room only, because I think everyone knows what's about to happen, right? But it shouldn't happen, but it does over and over and over again. If you're a military service member and you've already made a statement, or you've given an admission or a confession that isn't true, or you've had a cell phone seized, or there's evidence that looks damning on its face that you think is going to be used against you at trial, let me tell you what, all hope is not lost. You still can fight this. You can still take this case to trial, and it can still be won. Give me a call at 813-669-3500, or do additional research at my website, BileckiLawGroup.com, and get us into the fight.